this poem called Summer Day by Mary Oliver, which many of
We
you
love Mary
know.
Oh,
Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass and who is eating sugar out of my hand. Maybe that was what was in that bag of sugar.
There you go.
Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
Ooh, that's great.
Mary Oliver.
She can sing it.
She can sing it. She can preach it, she can sing it. She lived it.
Yeah.
So, and I chose it also because as we near the end of our book time together, it's like, yeah, this was great. And, we enjoyed reading it. We love looking at his pictures and all of that. And then we have to decide, what is it we plan to do with it? What is it we plan to do with it? Just gonna put this book on your shelf. You're just gonna put it away. You're just gonna, that was good. I enjoyed my time with Allison and the gals and the guys, but, or is it mean something? If Jesus was serious, does it mean something for us? Oh, Helen's
Wait.
Helen's got an answer.
You gotta give some of these away.
Oh, there
You
you
gotta
go.
pass it on and you gotta act. I got that.
Yeah,
You gotta do it.
thank you. Yeah. All right, you don't have to answer the question, but I'm glad you did. And we welcome. No, it's awesome. I'm glad you did. So we welcome Steve. Steve, thanks for coming and joining us on Zoom for our last class on this, because beginning next Thursday, we'll have a program at night called The Final Days, which anybody can buy the book or anybody can buy the video. And it's so easy to read and understand. And I think you'll really enjoy the sessions that we're gonna do on Thursday nights. And plus, if you come in person, you get to have dinner first. So,
having
you
a
get to have
soup supper.
a soup supper, that's right. So you get to have soup supper and enjoy examining, contemplate Jesus's last days from the four gospels' different perspectives and what each of them gives to us. And then it becomes, as I like to talk about, right? It's sacred history. It's not just history. It's history that didn't just happen. It's history that's happening all the time. So how the resurrection, how are Jesus's last days
Sorry.
Still happening for us every day?
Are you zooming?
No, we're not Zooming.
Thanks.
Hey, Steve.
You can read the book and get the video, but we can't, it's just not, it's too difficult to do that. Plus, I'm not here for 2 of the Thursdays, so sorry, I can't make that work. All right. So, shall we start? I ask you all to read through 8 and 9 and pick your 2 favorite chapters. Because there's not gonna be time for us, obviously, to go through the 20 chapters or plus for the end. And a lot of what he does at the end in these last chapters is a recapitulation, right? It's a reimagining of everything else we've already covered. Like then it is more like, what are you gonna do about that? So I'm gonna sit back. You tell me which chapters you wanna do, and I would like you not to do both of yours at one time. I'd like you to do one, let somebody else do one, then we can get back to how much time we have. All right? Questions? Yellow
Good.
chapter?
I got it.
All right, who's gonna go first?
I really like the last chapter,
Okay,
chapter 9. There was a lot in there that I underlined, and especially, when it was talking about soul gravity.
all right. You have to give us a page.
Okay, on page 178 and 179.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Laura.
What Jesus listeners felt and what we feel around those with soul gravity is the presence of the divine. And I have met people like that. I know that have had what he calls soul gravity, where you feel that you are in the presence of the divine. And the very last sentence too, or last 3, are you aware of what is really drawing your soul? And that's something, in DOK, we were supposed to choose a word that we were gonna focus on this year, and I chose listen. And I wanna really listen so I can find out what is drawing my soul and what I'm attracted to. And, am I really eager to be drawn into the presence of God? I hope so, I think so. But, yeah, there was a lot in this chapter that spoke to me.
Anyone else want to answer those questions? Are you aware of what is really drawing your soul? Or in other words, like Mary Oliver said, what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Isn't that something, Laura? It just fit right together.
It
didn't
did.
What is really drawing your soul? I love that picture because we understand gravity, right? It's one of the first things we learn. When you drop your spoon off your high chair, it falls right to the floor. How many times your mama picks it up, that's a different story, before the dog gets it or whatever, but that's a gravity we understand right away. That's a principle we get. And as he says, if we're hungry for something, how are we searching? I mean, that's the label, right? Many churches have these classes called seeker classes, right? What is a seeker class?
No.
What are we looking for?
People who pray, it's been like a magnet for me this winter to come here and reconnect with old friends and make new friends. And what's the common denominator? It's like a magnet. It's this place, it's these people, it's the action that we do in our daily life. It's like a magnet.
Gravity.
Gravity, okay, is
Yeah.
this gravity? It's another word, magnet, gravity. I just have a different
Mhm.
image.
Yeah.
So you might find it in prayer, but you're also saying you find it in community.
Yes,
Okay.
people who pray.
Yeah.
A community who prays.
Right.
I can go to my prayer closet, or I could come in here at
Mhm.
6 o'clock in the morning and pray by myself. But
Well, I see also in our Latin readings, the ones from, this book of the
And
development,
development.
she's talking a lot about community. And how important that is. And also on page 175, the very end of that, it talks about, in Christian life, we must be willing to spend time in the servants' quarters and cellars to establish unseen and uncelebrated patterns of obedience. And, she compared Downton Abbey, the upstairs and the downstairs, and I could relate to that too. I love that series. But again, that's something that I think we do in community. Sometimes it might be unseen and uncelebrated, but that's what we're asked to do.
And in the text yesterday in the gospel reading, right, you don't have to show your piety before others. That, right, that is exactly that. You're developing what's underneath that. You're working on your roots. Okay, well, we went to another chapter, but okay. Thank you, Laura, for that. Appreciate it. All right. Next. Chapter you loved. Maybe chapter you hated. I don't know.
The challenge you.
Yeah. Kevin, which did you pick? I'm just gonna pick up.
Why not?
Allison, I
Right.
think I missed, maybe what you explained, but, did you mean the, our favorite chapters in the whole book or just the two at the end?
Just the last two.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
if there were only two. Then how we pick two.
Can't find your place?
No, that's not.
Okay, I'll give you mine. That you knew I had one, right? So mine is the one that's like orthopraxy and orthodoxy.
John with them.
That might not be words you know. So I have to find it first.
144?
Yeah, 144. If Jesus was serious, then he actually expects us to do what he said.
Mhm.
And because I belong, because I belong to an order of priests, because I belong to a corner of the faith that is so occupied with ritual and literature and right behavior, generally as opposed to like in that building, right? Like, you know, when do we cross ourselves? When do we bow? When do we raise the gospel? When do we blah, 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 right? So that's orthopraxy. As opposed to right belief, which is kind of harder. I can learn all the steps for all the liturgies. I can learn what's expected of me as a priest, like all the behavior, all the things. But if I'm not believing correctly, Jesus isn't in my circle. So he's got these, he loves the Venn diagram, doesn't he? So anyway, so he got the Venn diagram and in the middle is Jesus. And so, you know, right behavior and right belief. You could say this about a marriage. Absolutely, right? Any relationship that we have. Well, I'm doing all the right things. I get him flowers, or I buy him a power tool, or you know, whatever it is. But if I'm not acting like I should as a spouse, as a life partner, then we're not meeting. We're not meeting. So, or I mean, you might think of a better example. You could say the same thing about anything. You could learn to be the best nurse ever. You would know exactly what the protocol is. You've had these nurses, but if there's not a relationship, what kind of nurse is that? Who wants that nurse? Yeah, I want someone who's competent and capable. I don't want someone who's incompetent. I'm not saying that. I don't want someone who's faking a degree in nursing or hasn't passed her boards. I mean, I want someone who has both of those things and where they intersect. But anyway, okay.
And a soul.
Yeah,
Because what you're describing is, I just have this vision, because I've seen it recently on TV, of, what do you call it? A robot doing the medical stuff. And that's really gonna be great, for the elder community, but it misses the human soul, the love that you feel, the touch, the sense of connection.
perhaps the intuition,
Yeah.
which I am kind of a intuitive, I fancy myself an intuitive. I might not be, but I'd like to think I am. I might be terrible at it. Oh, so he says, Jesus did not intend his sermon to be a beautiful ethical theory or a righteous but unattainable ideal. The evidence is overwhelming that Jesus expects us to do what Jesus taught. So it's not just to critique it, not just to sit back and admire it as a beautiful piece of literature, not just to think about how poignant it is, I mean, how often do we do? I do it all the time. Like I'll hear somebody else preach and I'll be like, oh, I love her delivery, or man, I would never have thought of bringing that analogy or example to a preaching, right? Not like, Lord, was I convicted? It's much easier to talk about content instead of conviction. Yeah, so this thing together, orthopraxy, orthodoxy. Right believing, right acting. There's my favorite chapter. Okay, Kevin, are you ready?
Yeah,
Okay,
144 and 168, 69 were neck and neck. I always liked the concentric circles. Maybe that's why I worked at
Oh.
MasterCard, I don't know.
okay. Yeah, that was the symbol right there.
Yeah, it is. It's the middle space, you know,
Yeah.
you may be with. You may feel, I may have a right belief in what am I looking at to do, what should I be leaving in? Versus, well, this is the right behavior, it's just gonna be done my way, the way I do it. So I'm gonna pull the right behavior, either me or others, towards this is what's, I believe is the right belief. And I think that middle section is where we strive to both gravitate towards. And that's of course what he drew in Jesus, because where we allow ourselves to overlap between, well, this is the right behavior, this is the right belief. They're not, I don't think either are wrong, but in the middle is where you really find the balance between the two. And I think that's important because, as it says over on 169, it is entirely possible to spend one's life devoted to God's mission as a substitute for being devoted to God himself. And that's
Whoa,
true.
right?
It's powerful, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that God's mission's like, that's not devoted to God. That's not it. And so I think that's more actually 169, which ties to 144.
Mhm.
So the diagram then on 168 is similar to that. That red line is that center balance between my value, or I guess it's supposed to be value, looks like value, but I think it's value versus my influence. How important am I? How am I influencing how things are versus what do I really value? And I've always been easily opposed to the thought of how big of a VIP am I? I really don't
Oh.
care. That's your mission, that's great, but that's not where I want to head. I don't think there's a right or wrong, I just think it's just a really good point that he makes in both chapters.
I think it's a learning curve. I
Yeah,
think, or an experience curve. Like it's not, I mean, maybe there are people who are born that way and I'm very thankful for them. But I think for most of us, this is how we learn and grow and recognize, to adapt, repent.
yeah,
You know, this is all about like, you may not know it initially. I mean, if you're, I don't know, who doesn't like getting, you know, attaboys and attagirls? I mean, we're,
but
you know, so we have to, yeah, go ahead.
to be chasing the attaboys and
Right,
attagirls,
right,
I don't have time for that.
right.
If that's what your mission is, I'm gonna be on a different path. And, you know, I actually have a tendency to be against the attaboys. If I hear someone say, oh, Kevin, you know, what? No, the team did this. No, the broader us, the broader we. And sometimes you just gotta go, thank you, and move on and shut up, which is hard for me to do.
Well, I think it's really a good reminder,
Someone chuckle, it's okay, somebody chuckle.
a good reminder that most of us aren't doing something alone. That's right.
Let's hope.
No, I mean,
I wanna be
I
with,
think that's the word for the day. That's the way I started watching the news today. We're not alone.
yeah,
You know,
Whatever that
it's-
is.
we are never alone. And there was part of that in here in this last few chapters. We are not alone. We don't do this without God
Right, it's God acting.
guiding next to us, fighting with steps in front, following footsteps, whatever you want to call it. But we're not alone.
and adding this exclamation point of this poem, summer day, is, what is the phrase? I have no time to rush. This says it I think beautifully is, get into that space, get into that summer day. Cause you've only got, what, one wild and precious life.
Right. It does bring it all in, doesn't it? I
Sure
mean,
does.
there's doing involved. The doing might be, I'm gonna put my face in the grass. I might really watch that grasshopper. I know all the stuff I have to do. I do know all the things I have to do.
Yeah,
And so, it's important for us always to be looking for how we're gonna. That our work might be, kind of hard to say that, isn't it? That our work might be resting in that. And making really good choices. I think the other chapter I really, because the man who built, the person who built the house upon the rock,
Yeah,
right? What is that? What are we building our lives on? And perhaps rest could be a part of that. Cause that's what's gonna be the firm foundation. Because if it's something.
And where is that rest? That rest?
Yeah, where is that rest?
Well, it came in here again, and I think in the DOK and in the prayer services, we know it's in contemplative prayer, in time alone, in time with God alone, whatever. You're not alone, but you are.
Having some silence. Yeah,
Focus.
yeah. All right. Who else wants to give us a chapter?
Well, I've been gone a lot, so I haven't read all of it as closely as usual. But when I picked up the book, it opens on page 169. And I guess that this sentence just jumped out at me and I went, oh, great. It says, they had forgotten that God can and often does use ungodly characters to advance his work.
Yeah,
Because I think that sometimes God may overdo it with the ungodly characters. But, the people, and it brought to mind, and this is sort of off subject a little bit, but like the people in Canada, I mean, they have all become united when they were all fighting and getting rid of Trudeau and all this kind of stuff. And our situation here has brought them all back together. The people in Canada are not, they said, forget languages. We've got to figure out what the people are doing below us. And so now, I mean, it was just amazing to me that would be something of all the years of their arguing would bring them together as a group of people. And that I just hate to think that all the people that God brings ungodly characters, but that's a good way to think.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
we certainly have it in the, in the Hebrew text, who was Pharaoh, but an ungodly character,
Right.
right?
And God, and that, God had him do things that were ungodly, to make
The
the
hard
people
part, right.
move and
Yep.
make them react and do more than just go, isn't that terrible?
Yeah,
So I don't know. It was just weird that that's what I saw.
well, I mean, that's an understanding of who God is. That supersede, I mean, this is when we were talking about prayer and how difficult that was. To know that we might not be receiving our heartfelt prayers desire. Because we don't understand the mind of God in that way. I mean, no, I'm a good girl. I say my prayers. I ask for righteous things. Why would God not grant my righteous requests? Because I don't know entirely the mind of God. I might not know any of it, actually. But I don't know what God's purpose is. I don't think God gives us, I know this gets into tricky, theological waters because it gets into the testing thing and I can't answer all those questions for anyone. I can just tell you, I don't think that's God's purpose. I just think that sometimes there's a deeper learning and we may not want it. I get that too. There's been lots of learnings in my life I did not want. But I think that's an expansion, Kate, on God using ungodly people for God's love. For love in the world. How that works? I don't know. But again, much of this book has been about turning over ourselves to that understanding that we might not know everything. In fact, we don't know much, right? Okay, thank you, Kate, for that. Sharon and Maisie, do you have some favorite chapters? I don't know why I felt like I needed to say it like that, but I hope.
No, I do, but of course I followed the directions incorrectly. I too thought that it was, from the whole book. And so I'm gonna go ahead and name my two anyway, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Earlier in the year, Judy had the gals in DOK pick a word that spoke to them, on the paper that she was passing around. And, most of them all were good news. And, but the one that I picked that I knew I needed, to address was fear. And so, that's been on my mind and, ways to, get God's help with that. And, of course, it's manifested in my anxiety. There's part 6 is in this book is freedom from fear. And of course, the first two, really caught me. If Jesus was serious, and this is on page 102, if Jesus was serious, then, oh, no, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Page 120. If Jesus was serious, then we can give ourselves away for the sake of others without fear. That's one. But the one that I really love is right before it. If Jesus was serious, then we'll not be enslaved by our fears. And I feel at times, I have been. And so I look at that Saint Patrick's prayer, and I look at the picture that that he drew there with Jesus all around, and the Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me. And I think it's especially since somehow yesterday hearing Rob preach and saying the sin of anxiety. And I thought, no, wait a minute. I think that's just, no, I think that's, wait a minute, let's not talk about it that way. And then, realize, well, who am I trusting? Who then am I relying on myself? No wonder you might be afraid. But spoiler alert, the way this movie ends is I'm with Jesus. And so I'm trying to hang on to that spoiler alert. But these two chapters meant something to me. So forgive me for not following the direction.
Oh, well, absolution is great.
Absolutely.
Sharon, I also liked on page 121 where it said, Thomas Aquinas said that fear causes a contraction of the soul. And I
Yes,
experienced that too.
Oh,
right.
I wouldn't want that for any of you. Beloveds, no contractions of your souls,
Right.
but expansions of your souls. That's what I see for each of you, just expanding soul life. And, but I think that's true. And we know it if we want to give it a pathology, we know it pathologically when it becomes, I can't go out of my house.
Yeah,
Right? We understand that pathology, we could give it to sort of say, I've got agoraphobia, whatever it is. I'm probably saying it, agoraphobia, thanks. Or I can only be around, everybody's heard my story, like, I can't go to the park anymore because there might be dogs in the park, and one time I was bitten. It started off like I just didn't like German shepherds, and then I didn't like dogs, and then I couldn't go to the park anymore because there are dogs in the park.
you're right.
My thing was like, I can't talk to anyone who has a beard, whatever. I mean, like, well, there's ways that
I'm
you're.
sorry, did you say a beard or a beard?
A beard,
Oh,
A beard.
a beard. I'm through that one now too.
okay.
But anyway.
Well,
I can't
Laura,
be around anyone who smells like alcohol, like immediately I'm like, oh, done, gone, goodbye.
Laura,
Oh, later.
Where are you? On what page? 120?
Laura, the other line that speaks to me is on page 121, you were just quoting. The last one, fear engenders fear. It never gives birth to love. Anyway, good stuff, and it's my theme on Lent as well. And anyway,
Okay, that sounds like a worthy journey.
all right, thank you.
All right. Mr. Hallbeck, Mr. Senior Warden, do you have any favorite chapters from the last two?
Yes, I followed your directions.
Okay.
So I like, and one of the things I really liked about this study is, of course, the illustrations, which has really made it fun. And I like illustrations anyway. So I like chapter 154 about being a Christmas tree Christian. And it kind of follows a little bit, Allison, of your comment about orthodoxy, and we as Episcopalians can sometimes get so wrapped around the liturgy and all of the pretense of Episcopal faith and all of the symbols and those sorts of things. So I like this. If Jesus was serious, and we'll focus more on our life with God rather than our works for him. And of course, I love the decoration that lists there, but the text talked about in many Christian communities, however, there are great social pressures to appear godly. This tempts us to focus almost exclusively upon visible, easily measurable fruitfulness, which often gets confused with effectiveness. Rather than developing a life rooted in Christ through prayer, we worry more about displaying the right behaviors and symbols in front of others. When we do this, we become Christmas tree Christians. And it goes on to speak about, that illustration, if you will. It's real easy sometimes as someone who likes the liturgy, and who likes to get involved, and who maybe likes being a vestry member and an outreach grants committee person, that you get hung up on all of those symbols as a way of making yourself be righteous, versus what really is being righteous, which is being close to God and not being hung up on all those other symbols. So that one spoke to me. Too many of our communities are filled with beautiful but dead Christmas trees, yet what our Lord desires is the subtle beauty of fruitful, thriving orchard.
What page are you on? I'm sorry. I can't.
154.
Okay.
I know, I think for a couple of chapters, he talks about this idea about what the fruit is. And something that's dead is not gonna bear any fruit. And an orange tree is not gonna give us apples or whatever, but, that's just such a good, what is the fruit? We talk about this a lot, and then what is the experience? I think the right relationship, which I get it, it's like dare I mention eggs, but it's like a chicken and egg thing. Like what comes first? A right relationship with God, or right works, or whatever. I think throughout this, we see this, whether it's talking about the roots that we have to build on a strong foundation, so I think relationship is first. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can we think or do ourselves into having a relationship? I've seen it work that way too. I certainly have. I would say in fact, Kevin Rowland might be the best example of that.
What?
What?
I was highlighting Fred's stuff.
I don't know. No, seriously,
What'd I do?
you knew what you wanted to do, how you wanted to do it, like what was important, but there was something missing in this part,
Oh, yeah,
in the center. Right?
sure.
You're sorry,
Yeah,
you're
no,
my poster child
Do
for it.
it.
So, but his right relationship grew out of that.
That's right.
It grew out of that. So I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm also saying that that with it, with the right relationship,
Yeah,
that's our goal.
right. As you pointed out during that time, I might have had the right behavior.
Right.
But when you asked me about my belief in that behavior, it was void. So I had to think about that, and that seed of spiritual feeding needed to be planted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't mind thinking.
Thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate yours.
Well, that goes along with the two sentences at the top of 155. Saying our focus should not be on the fruit of our branches, but the depth of our roots.
Right,
As we live deeply with Jesus, the fruit will take care of itself.
otherwise it's thrown to the curb, as Fred
So
was
the
saying.
fruit is still important, but it needs to come out of, first we need to live deeply with Jesus.
And when we look at people for certain roles in our parish, like who should serve and who should be on a committee or who should lead, right? I frequently am the one saying, what is your prayer life? What is your connection to God? How is it that you're directing your spiritual development? Are you coming to Sunday school? Doesn't mean anything other than, are you coming to Sunday school? Are you coming to church? Are you engaging in the community? So I think these things are important. Thank you, Fred. Did you have another one?
Well, I like the one that you had spoken about because
Oh.
it sort of led me to the Christmas tree
Yeah.
example. So I enjoyed focusing on the two of those.
Okay. Awesome. Herb, it's nice to see your face. Did you have a chance to maybe find a couple of chapters in the end of the book that?
So I would point to chapter 65. If Jesus was serious, then love really is what matters most.
There you go.
So that's,
Page 164.
And I think this kind of underlies a lot of what we've been talking today, because to me, I feel that the emphasis has been on your relationship and maybe kind of putting down the works you might do or what you're called to do and that sort of thing. And I don't think that's what's intended here. I think this points this out that whatever we're called to do, if we don't have this understanding and that God's love is what's most important, then we're not coming from the right place. So
Right.
I think this speaks to me that you have to put your works, if I can call it that, but what you do, what we're called to do, the gifts, using the gifts that we're given, if they don't emanate from love of God and love of others, then we're putting ourselves in control rather than God. And therefore we're not coming from the right place in our call, our understanding of our call, understanding of our gifts and how we use them and so forth. So
Yeah, because these are some hard words of Jesus in this text, right? Away from me, you evildoers. I know that's not the translation we normally use. That's an NIV translation, but wow. He says it might mean lawlessness. Yeah.
so
False
the last
false
sentence,
prophets. Yeah. Go ahead, Herb.
The last sentence, false Christianity always inverts this by preferring spectacular works over humble obedience and sacrificial love. And so maybe that's a better way of saying what I just tried to say, that
Good, yeah.
that we have to be in the right place to be able to use the gifts and use our calling for the good of God. If we're trying to determine what it is without God, then it's, as they say, false Christianity.
Yeah. And it's what gets the headlines though, often, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Acts of compassion, mercy, and love rather than impressive displays of power. Obedience and sacrificial love. These are not easy. I would suggest that Lent, if Lent is about anything, it might be about us, even working on humble obedience and sacrificial love. We've been talking a lot in Breathing Underwater about what sacrifice means. This is a pretty good example of that. All right, we have like 15 minutes. Who else wants to say something this morning? Because I have other things to say, and you know that. Surprise.
Okay, I'll go to, page 148, chapter 57. If Jesus is serious, then the narrow way will never be a lonely way.
That's what you were saying. Or is
Yeah,
that-
that's pretty much
yeah.
reiterates that. But what
Yeah.
opened up for me, the narrow path is not a lonely path, and we think we have to go into our closet or we have to be alone. But you know what came up for me, and I know some of you have done this, was that Cursillo program, where we were just inundated with love and understanding and fellowship. And it just broke down all kinds of walls for me
Mhm.
and for many people. And finally came to the realization that we are not alone. We are surrounded by angels, and it's you and you and you and you and you and you and you, right here.
Mhm.
That then there's no fear. If you know that you're never alone, that God is always with you. And God's angels are always with you, physically here with you, spiritually.
Mhm.
Wow. Has anyone seen that Dietrich Bonhoeffer movie? Was that
I
shown?
know Kate has seen it,
What is that?
the Bonhoeffer movie.
The new
Oh, it's
one.
wonderful. Although I can't understand, well, never mind. But anyway, we saw it a while back. You can get it on television and stream it, and it is well worth
Yeah,
every minute.
I saw that last weekend, and it's tearful, but right to your soul, and talk about action. But you
And-
see him from, it started when he wasn't always a saint. You
No,
just see that. It's wonderful. I hope we get to do that as a group here.
well, I called this church and told Ellen to put it on the list. It was so good that we were talking about watching it again. It's but the part of that is that he knew ultimately that they were going to kill him. I mean, there was just, he was so outnumbered that there was no chance much for him to, and even the people that loved him couldn't do anything to really help him. And all of a sudden you get this Christ-like image of, even the disciples couldn't help him, and nobody could except God. And that's what Bonhoeffer did the same thing. I mean, he was sort of it's so worth seeing. So
And how his life affected people from generation to generation, but I think that movie brought it up immediately when you saw his trailer.
yes, and the thing that I thought was, when you take a lot of stuff, a lot of classes over periods of time, or you hear a sermon and you hear somebody say, well, Friedrich Bonhoeffer, and they throw his name out, or you hear some of his teachings or what he thought. I mean, he's just another person that you hear quoted all the time. But when you see this movie, I don't think that anybody will ever say his name to me again that I don't immediately have a flash of the life that the man lived, the absolute terror. I mean, I can't, and the old saying, I mean, they attributed a lot of it to him, but first they came for the gypsies and I didn't stand up because I wasn't a gypsy. And then they came for the Jews and I didn't stand up because I wasn't a Jew. And then they came for, and it goes through and it said, then they came for me and there was nobody left to stand up for me. And that's always been one of my favorite. I have that, I carry that with me all the time, but he's really exemplifies that saying. My advice is to see it.
Well, I think if we know we're not alone, what a difference that will make on a narrow way. The next chapter for me was another one of the ones I really, I thought, because the author comes from an evangelical background. And so for him to write this in this way on page 152 is, abide or assemble. So how fruit happens, there we have the trees growing, being watered and having sunshine. And then we have how the evangelical industrial complex thinks fruit happens.
Oh, sorry.
I know it's hard because we're surrounded by this model for, going on 40 years now. This isn't a new experience. These bigger, better, flashier churches, right? He says we live in a self-improvement culture. We believe that whatever is undesirable, deficient, or undeveloped, this is Rob's sermon from yesterday, you all, or underdeveloped in us can be changed with a combination of knowledge and willpower. You just need to read the right book, get into the right program, or work the right system to become the person that you want to be. Yet Jesus presents a different vision of human potential when he compared people to trees. The fruit a tree produces, he said, is determined by the identity of the tree. Your gifts are your gifts. Your gifts aren't your neighbor's gifts or your preacher's gifts or somebody else. This is perplexing to Christians in our self-improvement culture. When we read that the fruit of the Spirit is, join in, love, joy, peace, kindness, patience, self-control, and faithfulness, gentleness, we immediately look for a program that will produce more of these qualities in our lives. We assume that patience is improved by directly pursuing more patience. The call of Christ, however, is not to improve our fruit, but to seek the transformation of our identity. Maybe that's the whole key of the Sermon on the Mount. Our old selves must be uprooted and a new self planted in God. We must become trees rooted in God and thriving on his Spirit. then we will naturally, even effortlessly, produce God's good fruit. I'm thinking about Psalm 1 that we read a couple of weeks ago, a tree planted by living water that will survive no matter what. Right? No matter
Listen,
what.
Um,
Yeah, amazing.
it occurs to me so much emphasis, and he does this here. He talks a lot about our focus on our efforts and our fruit. I mean, what we do rather than sort of what's in here. And sometimes I get discouraged by my lack of motivation, or, I sort of feel, am I a lazy Christian for not producing enough fruit and doing enough, for other people and all. But I just love what, then we will produce good fruit naturally and effortlessly. It's not a matter of pulling up ourselves by our own bootstraps. If we nurture and grow spiritually, the fruit is the result of that. And so to try to, beat myself up to, do more. I don't do enough. I don't, it's important what we do in our works and our ministry to other people, but that will be the result of our growth and closeness to Jesus. So,
Absolutely. For years I did groups with moms, who struggled all the time with that. Maisie, how can me being just a mom, that was their words, not mine. How is that fruitful? I mean, they knew, like being the mom, being there, driving the carpool, whatever. But, but what am I doing? What am I doing? I don't want to teach Sunday school. I don't want to be out in the evening. What am I doing? And just sitting with them in that and understanding just what you said, that recognizing on so many levels, God's got this. Like, can we just let God have this? Do we have to get in God's lane, right? Can we just let God have this and all will be well? When I quote Julian of Norwich and say all will be well and all manner of things shall be well, that's what I mean. This is God's word. And I know that there's a tension in us to sort of, because we we grew up in, we are surrounded by a kind of report card kind of world. I want to see your grades. I want to see your diplomas. I want to see your trophies. I want to see your, whatever. Your accomplishments. Feel like, you want to have a trench coat and you go, hey, want to buy a watch? No, we don't, that's not it. We don't have to have a collection of stuff.
I don't have time for this.
We don't have time for that. Oh, you're not here, Sharon.
I know.
Kevin just took your spot, but
No, there's no such place.
but thank you,
She
Maisie,
did a
for
fun.
thank you, Maisie, for being, honest about that, because that vulnerability about, because I hope you just remember, go look up Mary Oliver's Summer Day poem and remember, no, a lot of what we do is when we let go. When we just see that stick on the ground and you pick it up and you admire it and the lichen on it or a pine cone and its shape, that's what you're supposed to be doing. That is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. All right? All right. Anyone else? We have a couple of minutes.
And by doing that, you set an example to the next person.
Yeah.
Because now I can't go for a walk without doing that, because it's in my head, what you have said, your witness, it's like a witnessing. that we do for each other in a strange way, and it's, I picked up a whole bunch of stuff that I don't know, but maybe I'll make something out of it instead.
Right.
Teresa,
Well, that's some, I'm a late bloomer and I've, never felt like I had much to offer. I mean, let's just be, but, and so God has just shown me that little things that have been all around me that now are just screaming for me to appreciate. And then it turns out that I can make things and gift them, I don't know. It's just something I can do that, but I don't have to put myself down for not doing everything.
You're good. Great. Okay, well, I want to take these last few minutes to sort of say thank you to you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for reading. Thank you for participating. You never know when I do this sort of in a vacuum. I see a book, I like a book, like, well, y'all be forced to read this. But really what the highlight is always the community that gathers. That's just, it's the most life-giving part for me. Whether that you're on the screen or whether you're in the room, it doesn't, that part's, I mean, I like it better when you're like flesh and blood, I get that, but when we're in the room together, it's the best. Whatever that room looks like on the screen or in this space. So thank you for your participation with this. And I will say again, we will meet on Thursday mornings beginning, I think, the Thursday after Easter. So that would be 24th of April. And we will begin an exploration of the parables together.
Is that a book?
It's a book and the information will be forthcoming. I haven't quite decided how I'm gonna use the book. I might not use it. There's also a video that goes with it. I might not use it. I just, it's there. It's gonna be like backup for me probably, but so far I'm okay with it. I like it. So we'll see. I've never done this in this way. I mean, I've taught the parables a bunch, but so I'm looking forward to having you all teach me something about the parables. Anything?
Thank you so much for all the time that you spend
Mhm.
getting ready when you could have been doing other things, but getting ready for this crew who seems to be your crew. I mean, we're all, I look so forward just to seeing everybody's faces and especially when I'm not there, and learning different insights and different ways of looking at things, and you bring that to us
it's great.
in such an incredible way that
You really do.
I mean, you're a blessing, and I thank you that I get to be part of it.
Well, if y'all didn't show up, there wouldn't be anything for me to do. So it's a mutually symbiotic, is that word? Yeah, relationship. So let's give all of ourselves a good hand.
Yes, and in addition to that, Allison, you can sing. Keep on singing.
Thank you, Juju. Thank you.